In 1994, the movie The Crow was released in theaters and was just an amazing smash hit. I don't think the studio expected it to become the film that it has become. Eric Draven back from the dead for revenge against the murder of him and his girlfriend. The film catapulted Goth-style movies to levels that no one had ever seen before. And the fact that Brandon Lee was killed while making the movie definitely did help catapult this thing to cult status. But now, in 2024, we have a new version of The Crow that has been released. But does it measure up? So now that The Crow has been released in theaters, the question is anyone going to see it? What are the critics saying about it? Does it do a better job of telling the story? Or does it leave people very depressed and thinking that the film is just a piece of garbage that should never have been made? There are films that, as I said before, that are labeled as cult status. And because they're cult status, I personally think they shouldn't be touched. For me, a movie reaching such a level means that it is at the spot where nothing can ever be done to hurt it. It is perfection. And if it is perfection, then it should not be messed with and remade. But now, 30 years later, we do have the new version of The Crow out. But is it as good? Let's talk about it and see what some people are saying about it. Everyone, this is W.F.S. and thank you for coming. I want to talk today, as I said in the opening, about the movie The Crow. The original 1994 movie, to me, was just an amazing classic. I fell in love with the movie when a friend of mine introduced it to me on Laserdisc. Never got a chance to see it in the theater, but when my friend showed it to me, it was just like, oh my God, this movie is so amazing. Now, the new version is out, and a lot of people out there are seeing it, and I was working on a video last night about critics' reviews. Unfortunately, that video fell apart, but then I see more articles out today where audiences, some are saying, it's not that good. Others are saying, whoa, this is amazing. So let's talk about it a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about this article that comes from The Guardian. The Crow review, unfortunately awful Goth remake. And then, of course, I'm going to talk about some of the comments that have been made about the movie. Along the way, I would love to hear your thoughts and comments on this. So please drop those comments below and let me know. And right now, let's get into the video about The Crow. Now, as I said, this article is coming from the Guardian, and they're not happy with The Crow. Rupert Sanders' attempt to resurrect the 1994 cult revenge thriller has become one of 2024's most atrocious films. Damn, that's just brutal right there. And there are other critics out there who tear this thing apart. It was no real surprise that this tortured, updated 1994 cursed goth revenge thriller, The Crow, would be a misfire. It has been in development since 2008 with multiple directors and actors attached ever since. But generally, stating just how utterly wrenching the finished product is how unfit it is for widescreen release. Filmed 2 years ago and dumped on a low expectation late summer weekend, The Crow 2.0 is a total head-in-hands disaster. Incoherently plotted, sloppy, made, destined to join the annals of the very worst and most pointless remakes ever made. Again, damn, let the guy speak his mind, and he's just pouring out his heart about how terrible this film is. Now, the critic score comes from Rotten Tomatoes, and damn, they don't do this thing any justice. They have it at 20%, while audience scores give it about 66. So let's take a look at some of the other critic reviews. The Crow 2.0 achieves a special kind of depressing IP myth, a decade of plus of development, 26 credited producers, countless scenes devoid of connective narrative tissue, adding up to 111 minutes of incompetent, slowless minutes, states the review from the Globe and the Mail. The Crow is almost on par with Borderlands for being one of the most worst adaptations of 2024, maybe of the decade. You know, this is just bad. Alright, so Screen Rant decided to release a critic and audience score on how not only today's release of The Crow, the 2024 release, stacks up against previous Crows in the franchise. And Brandon Lee's Crow, the 1994, is number one on the chart, followed by, in order, of course, Crow, City of Angels, The Crow, Salvation, The Crow, Wicked Prayer, and then, of course, The Crow 2024. And as you can see from the comparisons here, Brandon Lee's Crow is at 86% critic, and audience puts it at 90. Now we'll go down to today's Crow, 2021 for the critics, 64 for audience. But I have a problem with this chart and not the audience score for today's Crow. As I said before, I probably will not see it. I like the original, and I just don't want to mess with perfection. But the problem that I have is the chart itself. It seems a bit biased in my opinion. And I think that it doesn't give the 2024 Crow a fair shot. First of all, Rotten Tomato and critic scoring of films did not exist when the original 1994 came out. In my research, Rotten Tomato and critic scoring didn't hit the internet until 2019 is when they started doing their critic scores and allowing audience and critics to see each other's opinions of these works. But you see, The Crow only came out a couple of days ago. And again, the critics are giving it a 21%, while the audience is giving it a 64%. All these other films had long been released before Rotten Tomatoes started doing their critic scores. These movies had already had fan following before The Crow 24 came out, of course, but I still think the deck is stacked against the 24 version because of these critic ratings. Now, on another note, The Crow Wicked Prayer never had a theater release. It went direct to video. So that should be taken off the list completely. It was a bomb to begin with, but at the same time, it should not be counted. All the others, correction, I apologize. I believe Salvation never made it to theaters too. I think that was a first direct-to-video release also. So The Crow City of Angels, and The Crow 24 should be the ones they're stacking it against because those had theatrical releases, whereas Salvation and Wicked Prayer did not. So I think the deck is stacked against 24's critical scores. That's just my own personal opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So have you seen the 2024 version of The Crow? And have you seen Brandon Lee's version, the 1994 version? Do you think the two of them are good? Do you think the 2024 is good? I've heard mixed reviews on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments. So drop those comments below and let me know. And until the next time, my friends, God bless.